Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null, broadcasting and video streaming live from our studios in New York City. This video stream will be seen later today. We're going to talk about the issues that make a difference today. I've done several programs in the last week, including Progressive Commentary Hour last night, looking at the life of Ramsey Clark with Ralph Nader and others who are reminding us of some of the values that he has stood for, and why shouldn't we be looking at these values in new independent platforms today. And now you'll have a chance to hear that on this coming Monday show. So I'm going to offer a difference of opinion today on several issues, and you'll have a chance to call in and share your points of view. We're going to have a really interesting person that tends to get people agitated when he talks on the issues, because he is one of these people that takes no prisoners. I mean, he goes right to the heart of an issue. So we'll hear from him a little later on. And then also, what about all these hardworking school teachers? Yeah, they work hard, and I have a lot of respect for them. But did you know how much they take out of their own pockets to help their students in their classes? We're going to give you a little insight on that. And also, I wanted to show you a little bit, just a short piece. You can watch the full piece, which is very well done, on PRN.FM's website. But this is of a gymnast who was good enough to get up to the Olympic trials and didn't tell anyone that she had fractured her back and had all kinds of physical problems, but she kept pushing herself until she literally collapsed. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that so you can see who she is and you can hear some of her story. But then here's the larger question I'm going to be asking, and I'm going to ask you to call in and share your points of view rather than me sharing mine. Why? Why do we allow this? Why do we encourage it? And in some cases, enable it and support it? When we push young kids to no longer have a balance in their childhood, but are under extreme pressure to put their minds and bodies to the task until literally it can break them. Now, some will succeed and go on to gain gold medals. So what? What is the value of an Olympic gold if you had to give up the most important time in your childhood for it? So we're going to talk about that. This whole need for excessive competition. And I have a lot of stories I'm going to share today. We're going to have Richard Gale give us the other side of John McCain, plus I'm going to share a few thoughts from Max Blumenthal from a special on Consortium News. You see, when I look at all of the adulation and all of the tears for John McCain and how he's a national hero, and I just saw today coming to work that they want to name a school after him in Queens. Well, what about all the people around the world who don't have a good day today because of John McCain and his policies, his war-making policies? So we're going to show you the truth about John McCain. Also, Facebook and censorship, and the Mad Ben Nemo and the Atlantic Council from Greg Murray. Also, shocking new study shows fracking is depleting U.S. drinking water sources at a catastrophic rate. And ISIS, we all know who ISIS is, was given, quote, breathing space in parts of Syria under U.S.-backed forces control, meaning that the United States has been and will continue to protect, to fund, to arm, directly and indirectly, ISIS. Well, how does that align with our being against terrorists? Well, it doesn't for anyone who actually chooses to look for the truth. So we're going to look for the truth there. But we always start with the latest on health and healing. Now, this is from Emory University School of Medicine, a report just out today, and they talk about too much of a good thing and what that means. And what they're saying is that the high-density lipoprotein, that's the supposed good protein, well, if it's very high, it's not so good. and that's a problem. You see, people try to get their cholesterol so low using statin drugs and diet. That's not healthy, because cholesterol per se is not the problem. In fact, in the French, it was called the French paradox. They have a high cholesterol diet, and yet they have very little heart disease. This is showing that if you have very high good cholesterol, the HDL, you face an increased risk of heart attack and death. And this is important. So here's how you overcome this. First, get your blood profile done once a year. And it'll tell you your low-density lipoproteins, your high-density lipoproteins, your regular cholesterol level, and then specifically always get your C-reactive protein, homocysteine, and fibrinogen levels, and triglycerides. Now that'll give you a pretty good idea of whether or not your inflammatory markers and your blood lipids are in balance. And if they are, good. How do you get them in balance? Take a B complex each day, 50 milligrams. As long as you got 50 milligrams of B1, B6, about 500 micrograms of folic acid in there, and vitamin C at 1,000, 2,000 milligrams, your homocysteine level will come down. B12 brings down also. That's why vegans must make sure that you supplement with 1 milligram a day of methylated B12. That'll help keep your homocysteine down. Remember, when your homocysteine level is elevated, let's say 14, 15, 16, you're at a far greater risk of a heart attack or stroke. Something that simple and that easy can bring it down. And you want to get your HDLs down to a normal level? A good plant-based diet. That's simple. Now, from the University of Nottingham, which has given us a study about the father's diet can affect the long-term health effects of their offspring. That's right, I gave you the diet last week of how women's diets will impact their offspring. Now, this is new research has shown that a lack of protein in a father's diet affects the quality of the sperm, which can have a direct impact on the long-term health of their offspring. The study entitled Parental Diet Programs Offspring's Health Through Sperm and was done. And so here's the key. Here's just the takeaway. Frequently, men think that the whole process outside of them impregnating a woman it's on to the woman. It is not. That is why I always suggest and recommend to couples who are having an intentional pregnancy that you take at least, ideally, a year, certainly not less than 6 months, to both the male and female to go on a cleansing detoxification program, to do natural chelation therapy, your chlorophylls, your greens, take out heavy metals like lead and cadmium, and that's important. So if you start to take out, let's say, lead or cadmium or mercury, that's going to give you a greater health of the sperm, which means a healthier pregnancy. From the man's point of view, don't have any alcohol, give up the meat products, have a clean diet. The cleaner the diet, the greater the likelihood of having a successful conception. So when I counsel people who have been through fertility clinics and spent tens of thousands of dollars, I ask them, did the doctors ever go through your diet? Well, no, just as long as we were having a good diet, they said everything was fine. It's not, because American medicine, unfortunately, does not know what a good diet is. In fact, years ago, when I was a senior fellow at the Institute of Applied Biology, I went down, we were over on the east side, Upper East Side, and I went to all the hospitals in the area, and I asked doctors, what would you recommend as a normal, good, healthy diet? And I took notes. And over a 3-month period, I collected several hundred inputs from doctors, and then I went about creating the doctor's diet from what they told me. And then I gave standard rat chow, and then I gave my own diet to 1,000 rats. And the results were spectacular in failing. I had to stop the experiment for the doctor's diet because obesity was rampant, and I started to see tail biting and then cannibalism. So that's when I said, this diet doesn't work. But that was the first time I was aware that someone had actually taken a random sampling from 5 different hospitals, from a multitude of doctors, of what they were recommending to their patients, and I gave it a try. And it was a massive failure. Now, the standard rat chow diet allowed the rats to live their normal lifespan. In this case, they're about a year. However, listen carefully because I think this is important. I believe that we should be eating very close to our natural state. And hence, the more refining, the more processing, the more denatured the food is. If you were to go to countries where they took the shell off of rice, you would find that you were getting a pure refined carbohydrate. That's not good. The B complex that you need is in that shell of the brown rice. But that's all true of almost every grain. So therefore, having whole grains and whole beans and nuts and seeds and tubers like potatoes, like a sweet potato has 300% more nutritional value and vitamin A and beta-carotene and vitamin C than a white potato. But we rarely eat sweet potatoes in the United States. We should. They're extremely healthy, but we don't. So what I did is I took what I consider a living food diet. Now, living food means that there's enzymes, the catalysts of life, the spark plugs of your body. And that's what the enzymes do. They energize you. They energize the mitochondria. And then with all the chlorophylls, red chlorophyll, purple, green, yellow, black, blues, all the different shades, the rainbow of what is in nature, in juices and berries, in fruits and vegetables. That's what I gave to the rats. I also gave them no water, not a drop of water in their entire lifespan. Instead, I gave them fresh-made organic juices every day, so they were fully hydrated. And remember, a juice is 97% water. But it's the water from the juice, no fluoride, no chlorine, no chemicals, no industrial solvents, no byproducts of medicine. Pure water. And watermelon is one of the best things you can give. By the way, it's also good for animals as well. In any case, what I did was I gave all this food every day. Also, I believe that the more confined we are in our workspace or our home space, the more it plays upon our need for freedom. It's like walking barefoot around your house is much better than walking in shoes. Your metatarsals and the bottom of your feet, you need display. You need that balance. You need the musculature system stimulated. Shoes don't allow that. Besides, you shouldn't wear a shoe in the house unless you take the shoe off and are willing to lick the sole. So if you're willing to lick a sole of a shoe that you just brought in the house, then I don't think any of my advice is going to matter anyhow. And when people say, well, I just clean my shoes, I wipe them on the carpet outside, well, okay, then lick them. If they're that clean, well, they're not that clean. Well, then they don't get in my house, period. It's that simple. And it surprised people because they're not used to this, something this simple in hygiene. So you give a healthy diet, you give really lots of juices, you're giving enzymes, phytonutrients, antioxidants, and I didn't spike it, meaning I didn't add anything extra. That would come 2 years later. And all of the rats lived, first of all, vitally healthy. They had no cages. They were not caged up. They were in this 3,000 square foot space, and they ran everywhere. It freaked everyone else out downstairs. I was considered the crazy guy upstairs because he's got rats running all over the place. Yeah, never got bitten, not once in 33 years. So, and also they were healthier, they were happy, and they got good exercise, and they got good diets. Get this, they lived 35% longer lifespan. Now, 2 years later, I would add in something else. I would start adding in the nutrients that science was showing was making a difference. And those nutrients that I added in, like L-carnosine, based upon their body weight, I would give them what today would be, for me, like 2,000 milligrams a day of L-carnosine, as an example. And they lived almost twice as long. So that's the difference when you're feeding people the way you should. So that's why when I'm detoxifying, helping people detoxify and rejuvenate, let's say to have an intended pregnancy, then always these people are successful, and they never have offspring that die from miscarriages or stillbirths or defects that were due to the mother or father doing things that everyone was thought was normal, but in point of fact was not. It wasn't healthy. Now, additionally, a couple other things. Happier. This is from the Duke Medical School and published in Age and Aging. Happy older people live longer. Quote, happy older people live longer, according to researchers at Duke Medical School. And in a study published in Age and Aging, the scientific journal of the British Geriatric Society, the authors found that an increase in happiness is directly proportional with a reduction in death. Well, now, why is that important? Because when I grew up, I saw people who were really, genuinely happy. And everywhere I went as a kid, on the blocks in my neighborhood, people had backyard gardens, small, generally 40 feet by 60 feet, that size of a lot, and they would plant different things. And some people seemed to have that green thumb, more so than others. And there were two people on my block, and they lived at opposite ends. Both were school teachers, and I liked them both. They were just terrific human beings. And as a kid, I'd go up to this one at the corner, and she would always say, come on back, and she would make sassafras tea, and she would have some kind of homemade cookie. And I remember sitting there on the swing, and my legs were too short to even hit the ground. And when I'd look at her, she was always very calm. And there were butterflies and all the aroma, the plants that she was growing, and how lush everything looked in this little backyard. It was like a little magical garden. And I would ask her questions. And one time I just asked her, I said, are you afraid of dying? I'm like 7 years old. And I don't know why that came into my mind. I'm guessing she was in her 60s or 70s. And she smiled and she said, no, because I was never afraid of living. And that, what she said is stuck in my mind this whole time. And what I found in the people that in my family, and I had a large extended family, was that people knew who they were. They knew the central purpose of their life. They were not afraid of issues. Every evening, if there was an issue that had to be dealt with, we dealt with it at the dinner table. There was no acting out. We all prided ourselves in developing character, and we would always look towards other people as examples of how we should be responding to life's crisis and life's issues. And that helped us. Now, why is that important? Because today, the younger generation, exceptions noted, absolutely, but I believe from my own personal experience, the vast majority of younger people are not getting that sense that live an authentic life, know who you are, know the purpose of life for yourself, and then understand how we all should be appreciative of each other, even though we have individual differences. But don't hold something against someone because one's Democrat, one's Republican, one's Catholic, one's Jewish. Those are absolutely irrelevant to what a person is as a human being and what you can share. And I just wish that more people would have the humility to acknowledge what they don't know and go on that journey, which is exciting and interesting, to explore. That's how we learn about things that otherwise we can't grow through because we're not aware of it. Now, finally, the use of the drugs, what are called the Z drugs, the benzos, is associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease, according to a study from the University of Eastern Finland. And the risk of increase is similar to the whole spectrum of these, regardless of the drug's half-life. The results were published in a University of East Finland scientific journal. So here's the takeaway message. For the past 30 years, my generation, the baby boomers, have been suggesting to parents, our seniors, that if they're stressed out or depressed about something, take a drug. And they have. And also, the United States and New Zealand are the only two countries in the world that allow the pharmaceutical industry to advertise drugs directly to the people. And all you have to do is take a moment and look at what they're saying versus what the drug is supposed to do. So you have a skin condition, or you have an allergy, your nose is running or itching, take this drug. And then the side effect is death. And I'm thinking, I'd rather have an itchy nose than die. But they make them so cutesy, and during that period of time when they're telling you the side effects, they always distract you with something that is more interesting in the ad. Well, how many people tune out the side effects? They just want the effect. Well, here's what you got to understand. The side effects are the effects of every drug that you take. There is no such thing really as side effects and effects, because no two people can be predicted to have the same effect or side effect. These are just the effects. So if I wanted to help overcome an allergy, or I would go on an allergy-free diet. I would simply eliminate that from my diet. How would I know which foods I'm allergic to? I would take the Cocoa Pulse test. I would simply in the morning, the night before, I'd put a single item of food by my bed, and in the morning when I woke up but hadn't gotten out of bed, I would take my pulse for 60 seconds. And let's say my pulse was 60. I would then take that, let's say, strawberry, and I would eat the strawberry. And I would stay in bed and not move around for 20 minutes. And then I would take my pulse again. And if my pulse went from 60 to, let's say, 65 or 70, then that means there's a high probability I'm allergic to that food. And in a week or two, I could go through all the foods I commonly consume. And that way I could target those foods, eliminate them from the diet. Now, here's what you do. You eliminate all targeted foods for 2 weeks. Then you bring a large amount back on the beginning of the third week, like you'd eat a whole bowl of strawberries if it was strawberries. And if you have a reaction, then you know definitely that's something you don't want to have in your body. How simple is that? It was invented by Dr. Koka, and it's the pulse test. And if I didn't want to go through all that and I just wanted to help myself with some of the cytokines, the inflammatory markers that happen when you take a food you're allergic to, I'd take some quercetin. 2,000-3,000 milligrams. And that immediately brings down allergic symptoms. But we're not doing that. We don't have any of the natural supplements showing you all the good things they do. Rarely, sometimes you'll see like a ubiquinol, but that's an individual product. But I'm talking about just all the things nutrients do, good diet does, that we don't need medicines for. That's the latest on health and healing. I'm Gary Null. Back in a moment. Please stay with us. Nice to have you with us, everyone. A few program announcements before we go to Brendan O'Neill. He's a firebrand. You could agree or disagree with him, and you'll have a chance to do exactly that in our Talkback segment. I'll hold my thoughts so we can hear yours. 888-874-4888 is our number. Again, 888-874-4888. We're going to go to him in just a moment, and then after that, we're going to have Richard Gale on to talk about the other side of John McCain. And then I have other things to share with you as well. But here are just a few things. First, I haven't had one in over a year, but I'm going to have a dance party. I've squeezed it in before I go out on the road. It's going to be, I believe, around I'll get the date, but I think it's around the 12th or 13th of September. So if you'd like to join it, and it's free. It's for all of you who have pledged WBAI, our sister station in New York. And I've done 50 of these, and we've had 6,000 people at, but we had to rent a venue that could get us in time, and this is one. It doesn't hold a lot of people, about 500, but we always fill up to the brim. So if you want to come, you can only make a reservation for yourself and a partner or friend. You can't say, I got 6 people going to come, because it never happens. And we cut it off when we know we're full. And we're going to have wonderful music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then it started getting bad. So we'll enjoy that. We'll dance. I have to pay for the bar, but you don't have to drink anything. And just have juices or water if you want. But just enjoy yourself. It's free. It's on me. So a dance party coming your way. If you want to come, call this number. This is the only way you're going to get in. 2 ways. Call 646-926-5422. 646-926-5422. It doesn't matter what age you are. You're coming to enjoy yourself. You're coming to socialize. You're coming to dance. You're coming to have a good time. And we've always had wonderful times at these parties. And you just see the enormous variety of people who listen to the show. Or you can go on the internet. You got to make a reservation. You got to go to prnstudio@gmail.com. prnstudio@gmail.com. So I'll look forward to that. Next week, we're going to be preempted for what amounts to 4 days. It's Tuesday for the rest of the week where the Supreme Court hearings are being held. And I'm glad that the people can have a chance to see this, because this is, you should see the kind of questions and the politics that go on and get to know a little bit more about this Kavanaugh, this man who's up for the Supreme Court. He is not a populist. He's not for unions. He's not for the environment. He's pro-corporate America. So I think it's very important that these hearings be televised. What I'm concerned with is WBAI, once again, with an outstanding staff and news reporting and people who are good at analysis, are excluded. It's always from the people, generally from KPFA, the one Pacifica station that I do not respect, and therefore I'm boycotting them. So if you want to hear my show next week, you can hear it over the telephone. Let me give you this number. Write it down now, because otherwise you're going to forget. Listen live every day by calling this number, 424-203-8046, 424-203-8046. If you can't listen live, listen later at 710-719-9976, 710-719-9976, or you can go right on your computer and go to prn.fm, prn.fm, the number one progressive radio station in the world. So until such time that they honor and respect all the outstanding intellects and political activists who could give good interpretation and what is called color coverage live, then no, they get none of my respect, and I'm not supporting them. By the way, they purged all of Bonnie Faulkner's archives, 17 years worth of archives. Well, the good news is Bonnie Faulkner's archives are now alive and well, and you can get them, download them for free on prn.fm. All right? So now you got a place where you can hear some of the finest broadcasting on radio, prn.fm, Bonnie Faulkner's archives for Guns and Butter. Now, I'm going on the road in about the 15th, either the 15th or 16th. My cinematographers are flying in, and we've got a caravan, because I'm shooting not one, I'm shooting 2 films simultaneously. I've never done 2 simultaneously on the same trip. This time I am. One on the environment. It'll be the most comprehensive, in-depth examination of how bad the environment is and what we have to do to try to make a difference, and also on poverty. And including that are people who are now going to be displaced because of environmental degradation. So these are 2 big films. And I just finished watching my latest film. It is done, and I'm just selecting premiere date in the fall when I get back. And also, by the way, if any of you have been to a retreat, like to call in and share a thought, because we are going to be having a retreat to help raise money for this station, WBAI, in order to buy premiums. That's the whole purpose of it. We have a lot of wonderful professionals who call in, and we get them premiums. In this way, we just had a, unfortunately, not financially successful fund drive. So we've got to get money from somewhere, and so this is one of the places we're doing it. Also this weekend, I only have 2 more weekends to do this. I'm setting aside Friday evening, Saturday evening, Sunday evening for, again, raising money. It's $25 to WBI. You make a check out to WBAI, and you give it to me. I'll give it to the station. And we either have dinner and socialize from like 6 o'clock on. That's Friday night. Dinner and a movie, a good art film, on Saturday, or dinner and a play on Sunday. You can do any one of those you want. I'm limiting it to 10 people just so that it's not massive. Because last time we did it, one night we had 50 people. It was great for the station because they made like $10,000. But you pay for your own meal and dinner. But it's one more way that we can help the station. So we're going to hear now from a person who believes in freedom of speech, even if that speech offends you. Because right now, censorship is everywhere. In fact, later today, I'm interviewing Abby Martin, who's now off Telesur because the United States is censoring them and her. So she no longer has that voice. And so we're going to carry her show starting, I believe, in a week on Sunday date. I'm giving her my place on my Talkback on Sunday night, which I've had for, 40 years? 40 years. So I'm giving it to her because she'll be a good voice. But Google is engaged in censorship. Facebook is in censorship. And, of course, most people have never thought of it this way, but what if you are attacked and vilified on Wikipedia? That's censorship. It's not allowing you to say what you have to say, nor representing your views in an honest way. So that is very important. All right, and that's what he's going to talk about right now. Listen in.
Thank you very much. 700 years ago, if someone had come to Oxford and stood here and said, I think everyone should be allowed to read the Bible, even peasants, that person would have been described as offensive. He would have been denounced, shouted at, and eventually no-platformed. That was certainly the experience of John Wycliffe. In 1382, he was banished from Oxford for, among other things, translating the Bible into English. His work was described as an offense against the ecclesiastical order. 200 years ago, if someone had come to Oxford and stood here and said, I don't believe in God, that person would have been described as offensive. He would have been ridiculed, yelled at. That was certainly the experience of Shelley, who in 1811 was banished from Oxford for writing a pamphlet called The Necessity of Atheism. One historical account describes how Shelley's pamphlet caused maximum offence. It describes how fellows and students at New College swept the pamphlets up and disposed of them, much like today's students sweep up copies of The Sun, which they also describe as causing maximum offence. 100 years ago, if someone had come to Oxford and stood here and said, I think a man should be allowed to have sex with another man, that person would have been described as offensive. He would have been booed, hissed at, no-platformed. That was certainly the experience of The Chameleon, an openly gay Oxford magazine which in 1894 survived for one issue only. Why? Because it was offensive. One observer described it as an insult to the animal creation and said it would have a dangerous influence. In other words, it made Oxford an unsafe space and it had to be stopped. much as today's student leaders ban lads' mags in the name of preserving safe spaces for students. So when today's student leaders clamp down on offensive stuff, they're actually carrying on a very long tradition. A tradition whereby the creme de la creme of British society take it upon themselves to police the parameters of acceptable thought and to exclude offensiveness from the academy. Throughout history, the church, politicians, universities have always branded certain ideas offensive and have waged war against them. Today, student leaders do the same. They carry out one of the oldest, foulest forms of intolerance, intolerance of anyone who gives offense. But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential. Humans have long had the urge to offend against the natural order, the religious order, the moral order, and in the process, they have pushed humanity forward. In fact, pretty much every leap forward in history, pretty much every freedom we enjoy is a product of individuals having given offense, having offended against the orthodoxies of their age. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress. Copernicus offended Christians when he said the sun was at the center of the universe. He really hurt them. And in the process, he made the world a better, more understandable place. John Wilkes, the 18th century radical journalist, offended everyone. He packed his newspapers with sex and lies and stories about bishops buggering their maids and so on and so on. And in the process, through his struggles with the authorities, he gave birth to press freedom. The newspaper Gay News caused profound offense to Christians in 1976 when it published a poem about a Roman centurion giving Jesus Christ a blowjob. And in the process, in its struggles with the authorities, it started a debate about the blasphemy laws, which eventually led to their abolition, expanding freedom of speech for all of you, for everyone.
Question.
No. The right to offend... The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. The gift of scientists, thinkers, agitators who bravely showed their asses to the dominant ideas of their era. Their offensiveness made you free. I know what some student leaders will say. Oh, but our no platforming is about protecting individuals. We only want to protect women from misogyny and black students from racism. So our intolerance is progressive. Please, how progressive is it to say that female students are so fragile that they can't cope with seeing a pair of tits in the sun? No, without falling apart. That doesn't sound progressive to me. That sounds paternalistic. How progressive is it to say that black students need these wise, white student leaders to protect them from harmful ideas? Because that doesn't sound progressive to me. That sounds neo-colonialist. The fact is, today's student leaders aren't protecting individuals, they're protecting an idea, and it is the most mainstream status quo idea of the 21st century, the idea of human vulnerability, the poisonous notion that humans are fragile and therefore our speech and our relations must be monitored and policed. It is this misanthropic, orthodox idea that they promote and which they protect from criticism as surely as priests once ring-fenced their beliefs from ridicule. In this choking climate, we have got to move beyond talking about a right to offend. We have to talk about a duty to offend. Anyone who cares for freedom, anyone who believes that humanity only progresses through being daring and disrespectful now has a duty to rile and stir and outrage, a duty to break out of the new grey conformism, a duty to ridicule the new guardians of decency, a duty to tell them orthodoxies. Thank you.
That's Brendan O'Neill. Your thoughts on Talkback, 888-874-4888. I'd like to hear what you have to say. When those calls come in, I'll put them on the air. Now, someone did just call in, and let's see who it is. Hi, what's your name, please? We have... Oh, Dr. Steve, are you there?
Hey, Gary.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, Dr. Steve. Dr. Steve is a board-certified physician living in California. Tell us what you called in for.
Well, I wanted to talk about some of the things I saw at the last retreat, and how excited I was about seeing some of these things. So, in fact, I told the last group that this was a special group. I never saw so many people just ready to transform and make big changes. And indeed I did. And I want to emphasize that, when people come to the retreat, you always tell them that you don't treat diseases, and you don't. You never talk about diseases. You never talk about anything specific with regards to diseases. But that doesn't mean that there weren't people there that had some major chronic diseases, including cancer and other major diseases. And do you remember we had on the last day of the retreat, you told everybody you told Max, who works in the emergency room, and myself to go down to the road to help some of the people that were going to be doing some power walking. And so we went down there, and I saw people who, at first, they came back at 3 miles, and that was no big thing to me because you take them out for a power walk every day, but they kept going, making lap after lap after lap, and I was seeing people who had major medical diseases who probably shouldn't, or at least, in mainstream, shouldn't have been doing much activity at all, who ended up doing marathons. And in fact, there was one gentleman who had some very major medical problems who, after the whole race was over, kept on going. And I think he did 30 miles. And this man had COPD and leukemia. And so, in fact, his name is Ron, and he was telling me that he used to like doing ballroom dancing. But the problem is with his COPD, and it was end stage, that he couldn't even do one ballroom dance, like in his home, with his children and so on. And so he, at the last day of the retreat, he was still doing power walking, and I think he did 30 miles.
He did 30 miles. 30 but there was a man with heart disease. There was a woman with diabetes who dropped her diabetes. You were there when she said from 190 resting blood sugar to 80.
Correct. And how about now there's a man with lung cancer who came back for a second retreat who power walked 3 miles.
Yeah. He couldn't walk when he came.
Couldn't walk. In fact, his doctors told him that his death date was already past due. So the fact that he just power walked 3 miles is pretty fantastic.
Here's a question for you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you keep coming back?
Well, I think I keep coming back because I'm very curious. I have a background in science. I'm a scientist first. I did some major research at the university level in DNA mutations and repair. And so I have a background in science, and I just have that natural curiosity. But what I see at the retreat, I think this is very important. I see changes that science just can't explain. This is what I'm seeing at the retreats. And, people come without direction and some of them diseased. And when they leave, they have energy and purpose and oftentimes, in some cases, reversals of some very major medical problems. And
did you observe the man who showed up who wasn't supposed to be there with advanced gangrene, where they were going to cut off his leg the next morning, and he flew out that day wrapping his leg in cellophane, smelling to high heavens? A week later, his gangrene was gone?
Yes, I was there. In fact, when he first got there, I was one of the ones that was examining his gangrene. So, and you're right. And when he left, he didn't have gangrene. So, and that was I think that was a week. He was just there a week.
1 week, yes.
And I don't know if you remember this, but not the last retreat, but the retreat before, there were two different people who were deaf. One was deaf in one ear, and then they did some energy work, and they explained that night at the lecture that all of a sudden their hearing was back after not having hearing for, I think it was 10 years or something like that. That's incredible.
Here's the issue. Have you ever you've been to 7 or 8 retreats?
At least.
Have you ever once heard me explain what happens?
No, in fact, you tell people that you won't explain how it works. And so that's kind of a line we don't cross. But you explain it doesn't work, but you also said something that was very profound, and I don't know, it was at a lecture, and I wrote it down, and I think about it all the time. But you said that reality always precedes scientific verification. And so that means that, just because science hasn't figured it out yet doesn't mean that it isn't real. And so what I see with my own eyes, and it's very real.
It's just that there's no way I could explain it where science would be able to understand it. And you've seen how many doctors come from Sloan Kettering and from other places, board-certified physicians in their field. They're not into holistic health. They're interested in seeing what's going on. They've heard things. They can't figure it out. There must be some gimmick or trick to how does a person come with end-stage multiple sclerosis. And you were there when a woman who's 15 years in a wheelchair gets up and walks out to the middle of the floor. And all these 7 physicians they don't understand it. Well, I'm not there to explain what I know. I'm merely there to help people, guide them into understanding that there's more to life than what they believed or been taught. It's that simple. So people want to look for different meanings of life beyond what they have been living with, to come to a more peaceful state of being, a more spiritual state of being, a more happy state of being, a more positive. That is doable. And that's doable without science verification. It's just something people can do on their own. So, Steve, I have had every doctor and every nurse and every, Max, and they all want to know, how's this happen? How did 26 people, or how do all these people go 27 miles, one goes 30 miles when, A, they're deadly sick, and B, they've not trained one day at all, and they just go out and do it. You can't get marathoners who've trained for a year just to go do that, and they're healthy. Again, these are not things I'm going to discuss. As I say, if you benefit from something here, think it's a gift. If you don't, nothing's lost. So I look forward. You come to the next one?
I absolutely am. And I just want to say that whoever's planning on coming out, come out very open and willing to change, because if you do, you can be one of the people that just makes a huge transformation. I've seen it, and just be open to change. That's what I would advise people.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Gary.
And again, I make no diagnosis or treatment. Don't come and say, I heard that, you cure people. No, wrong reason to come. Don't do it. Don't come for that. Come because you want to be healthier and happier. You want to live a longer life. You want to look at different approaches to life. You want to deconstruct the life you've lived and see what is of value and not value. Then that makes sense to come. We are, I believe, full for the first week, but we went into a second week because, again, I don't like a lot of people there because I want to see everyone gets personal attention. But it's great vegan food, great meals, being close to nature, quiet time, a lot of quiet there. Call Luann, and Luann's on the line. Luann, I just saw you're up. Would you give your phone number for people, please?
Surely. It's 903-881-7008. That's 903-881-7008. Give a call. I interview everyone to make sure it's the right event for you.
Thank you, Luann. I see that we have Gwen from New York on, want to give us feedback on Brendan O'Neill. Hi, Gwen. You're on the air.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
Good.
Nice and hot today, right?
Yes.
I wanted to do the weather report. I really wanted to thank you for putting the piece on you just played about censorship. I completely agree with you, and I've had exactly the same thoughts as you. It's funny. It's like you read my mind, and then I hear you saying the words I'm thinking. And I think it's really scary and clever, the place that we're at. It's clever that they have kind of privatized the open media like Facebook and those kind of places where they're saturated with users. And then all of a sudden they don't have to follow the law because they're a private company. So you really can't say what you want. And I think that although I agree, I don't know this guy, Alex Jones. I heard he's very conservative, but I absolutely agree that he has the right to say what he wants to say, because once we start shutting down media that we don't like, it's all of it. And it also seems to be happening like with the Me Too movement, where, I was a victim of sexual violence myself, and it really shaped my life. But the idea of just plucking somebody out of the system and they're banished for good, we never hear from them again, we never hear what actually happened, we just don't know, and they're gone. It's like the blacklist of the 1950s. And so I think we're really falling into this we call it high morals rabbit hole. And I don't really know where it's going to lead, but I think that, it's a very clever system being put together by, probably some maniacal creep at the top who, is interested in making sure that the people become even weaker than they are with even less information that they have. And, right now we are fat and unhappy and kind of vulnerable nation because we really don't do much. We don't come out and vote. It's too much trouble to vote. It's too much trouble to be an activist. It's too much trouble to do everything. And so we are where we are. Our kids have autism. We struggle. We put everybody on a drug. I have to say, too, it was very interesting. I was with a young woman the other day, a beautiful young woman. She's a model. And she was talking about ADA or ADHA. It's a learning issue, I guess, and the kids have now. I think we always had it, by the way, too, but we didn't take drugs for it. But she did take drugs for it. And she said it was very interesting because all of a sudden she went from being a C student to an A student. And so I started thinking about performance-enhancing drugs, and I wondered if that was really fair to give somebody a drug that would make them do better in school. It's kind of like if I take, drugs to make me faster when I'm playing baseball, I'm not following the rules. So it was something I had not heard about these drugs before, and yet she claimed that her whole life in high school turned around. And I mean, I was happy to see it turned around, but I think I would have liked to see that happen organically and not through some pill.
Gwen, we're running out of time. Very briefly, the largest study done shows that the ADHD drugs, Ritalin mainly, does not enhance school performance. It simply slows down some of the distractibility that people would otherwise have. So if you're not learning because you're not paying attention and you're more focused, that could be a benefit to it. But most of these kids who are given diagnosis don't have a condition called ADHD to begin with. All right, we'll deal with that on an upcoming program. Thank you very much. We want to end our program today. I see Max called. Max, call back in tomorrow. Have a nice day, everyone.